It's 40,000 years ago, and someone just left you. Not left the tribe and got eaten by a wolf. Left. Left. Packed up their spear, walked to the other side of the fire, and started sitting with someone else. No text message. No, it's not you, it's me. No slow fade where they just stop responding. Just a person you loved 30 feet away, laughing at someone else's jokes while you sit there with a bowl of berries you were saving for them. And here's the question nobody asks. Did that actually hurt? Like, physically hurt? Or is heartbreak the chest tightness, the can't eat, can't sleep, replaying the last conversation at 3 a.m. heartbreak, a modern invention? Something we made up because we have too much free time and too many love songs? Because think about it, our ancestors didn't have therapy. They didn't have a best friend to call at midnight. They didn't have ice cream, sad movies, or a group chat to vent in. So either heartbreak is a brand new emotional technology, or somewhere out there 40,000 years ago, a Stone Age human was lying awake next to a dying fire, staring at the ceiling of a cave, wondering what they did wrong. Let's find out which one it actually is. And fair warning, the answer is way weirder and way more brutal than you're expecting. Section 1. The biology was already there. Let's start with the uncomfortable part. Heartbreak isn't a metaphor. It's not just a sad feeling we slapped a dramatic name on. When researchers at UCLA, led by a social neuroscientist named Naomi Eisenberger, put people in an MRI machine and made them feel socially rejected, the brain regions that lit up were the exact same regions that light up during physical pain. Not similar regions, the same ones. The anterior cingulate cortex, if you want the technical name, doesn't seem to know the difference between someone broke my arm and someone broke my heart. Which means when you say heartbreak hurts, that's not poetry, that's neuroscience. Your brain is running the exact same alarm system for social loss that it runs for physical injury. And that's not an accident. That's 40,000 plus years of evolution deciding that losing a bonded partner should hurt exactly as much as losing a limb, because for early humans, in a lot of ways, it basically was losing a limb. A partner meant help hunting, help gathering, a second set of eyes watching for predators while you slept, someone to share body heat with on a freezing night when hypothermia was a genuine, real threat. Losing that person wasn't just emotionally devastating, it was a measurable drop in your odds of surviving the winter. So the pain wasn't a bug, it was a warning system, the screaming. You just lost a resource critical to your survival, go fix this immediately. Section 2. We've been pair bonding for a very long time. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Because for this pain to exist in the first place, our ancestors had to actually form the kind of deep attachment that's worth grieving. And the evidence says they did, a long time ago. Anthropologists studying pair bonding across species point out that humans share a chemical signature with other monogamous-leaning animals, oxytocin and vasopressin, the same hormones responsible for the intense, addictive bonding new parents feel with a baby. Prairie voles, yes, a random rodent, became one of the most studied animals in relationship science because they form lifelong pair bonds using this exact same hormonal system. And humans run on almost identical wiring. Researchers estimate that pair bonding, meaning long-term, emotionally attached partnerships, not just random mating, likely goes back at least hundreds of thousands of years in the human lineage, potentially even into earlier hominin species before Homo sapiens existed, which means the attachment system that makes modern breakups devastating isn't something that showed up with Shakespeare or pop music. It's ancient, it's built into the operating system, and once you have real attachment, you have to have real loss when that attachment breaks. You can't get one without eventually getting the other. Section 3. The fossil evidence for grief. Here's where it stops being theory and starts being physical proof dug straight out of the ground. At a site called Shanidar Cave in Iraq, archaeologists found Neanderthal burials, some over 60,000 years old, that appear to include flower pollen clustered around the body, leading early researchers to call it the flower burial. Now, that specific interpretation has been debated for decades. Some scientists argue the pollen could have been introduced by burrowing rodents rather than intentional flowers. But even without the flowers, The burial itself tells you something huge. These were not random discarded bodies. These were deliberately, carefully buried in fetal positions, sometimes with tools, sometimes with red ochre pigment placed on the body, a pattern that shows up again and again at ancient burial sites across tens of thousands of years. You don't carefully arrange a body, dig a grave, and place objects with it if that body means nothing to you. Every single element of intentional burial is a fossil record of grief. It's proof that somebody, a parent, a partner, a friend, cared enough about that person to mark their absence in a permanent, physical way. And once a species is capable of that kind of grief for death, it's not a stretch to say they were capable of grief for a relationship that simply ended. The wiring is the same wiring. Body of Section 4, how the tribe absorbed the damage. But here's the part that actually separates ancient heartbreak from modern heartbreak. And it's the part most people get completely wrong. Modern breakups can feel apocalyptic partly because of isolation. You go home to an empty apartment. You're alone with your phone, alone with your thoughts, alone with a group chat that eventually goes quiet because your friends have their own lives. Ancient humans didn't have that problem for one simple structural reason: they were never alone. Anthropological studies of hunter-gatherer societies, groups like the Hadza in Tanzania or the Juhwansi in southern Africa, show that people lived in tight bands of maybe 20 to 50 individuals, sleeping close together, eating together, working together every single day for their entire lives. If a relationship ended, you didn't go home to silence. You went back to a fire surrounded by 15 other people who'd known you since childhood. People who'd feed you, distract you, and physically not let you spiral alone in a dark room for 6 days straight. Which, let's be honest, is a very modern breakup activity. Grief and heartbreak weren't private, hidden things you processed through a screen. They were communal. The tribe absorbed the damage the same way it absorbed every other hardship, collectively, immediately, without you having to ask for help or perform being fine for anyone. Body, Section 5. Mate switching was also just normal. Now, here's the twist that makes this whole thing weirder, and honestly, kind of comforting. Evolutionary psychologists studying human mating patterns point to something called mate switching. Essentially, the theory that humans evolved not to form one flawless lifelong bond and never look elsewhere, but to periodically reassess whether their current partnership was still the best option available, especially when circumstances changed. Researchers like David Buss, who spent decades studying the evolutionary psychology of relationships, argue this is why humans, across basically every culture ever studied, experience jealousy, breakups, remarriage, and yes, heartbreak as a completely universal cross-cultural pattern. It's not a flaw in the system. It is the system. In other words, your ancestors were breaking up with each other constantly, reassessing, moving on, pairing with someone new. It wasn't shameful, and it definitely wasn't rare. It was baked into the mating strategy of the entire species from the start. Section 6. The physical toll was real too. And in case you thought the pain was purely emotional, it wasn't. There's a very real medical condition called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, more commonly known as broken heart syndrome, where extreme emotional distress, grief, betrayal, sudden loss causes an actual physical weakening of the heart muscle, sometimes severe enough to mimic a heart attack. It's rare, but it's completely real, and it's documented in modern medical literature, which means the phrase, "my heart is broken," isn't just something we say. In extreme cases, for a small number of people, it is almost literally true. Your body doesn't fully distinguish between this relationship ending is devastating and this is a genuine physical emergency. And there's no reason to think that biological response is new. If your heart can do that today from grief alone, it could do that 40,000 years ago too. So here's what we actually know. Somewhere, tens of thousands of years ago, a human sat by a fire after someone they loved chose somebody else, and their brain lit up in exactly the same pattern as if they'd been physically injured. Their chest actually ached. Their body ran the same broken heart biology yours runs right now. But unlike you, they weren't alone with it. They didn't scroll through old messages at 2 a.m. in an empty room. They had 20, 30, 40 other people around that same fire. People who'd known them their whole life, who fed them, sat with them, and simply didn't let the silence get too loud. We didn't invent heartbreak. We just took away the fire. So the next time your chest feels tight over someone who left, understand that you're not weak and you're not overreacting. You're running the exact same ancient alarm system that's been going off in the human chest for tens of thousands of years. The only difference is, somewhere along the way, we forgot to sit closer to each other when it happens. Maybe that's the part worth bringing back.